Hey guys, my name is Loco Doco, the better looking host of Listen Loco, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, after this, there was the CLG where it was probably the worst year ever. But I have a question about that team, which is you've referenced some of those players that were around early in your career. One of them was Reignover, because obviously he was around the Incredible Miracle organisation, which became Big Foul Miracle. People don't know. But what people might not remember of when he came to CLG is this was actually when he was like on the downturn of his career, because he'd had obviously that amazing time at Fnatic. Then he was really good in Immortals. Then he had that huge contract in Team Liquid, but it didn't go that well. I heard he had like wrist issues or something. What was it like when he got to play with you in CLG? Like, was he having some sort of issue? Was he interested? I've heard he's a very smart player. A lot of people give him compliments.
Yeah, I mean, he's for sure a really smart player. And I think he was really talented still, like even on CLG, like when we were playing together, like we were playing like kind of like this similar way as like Xmidi and huhi style, but like a less good, less efficient compared to that. But still, I think, in my opinion, like the performance like comes and goes, like it's not really about you can put like the same amount of effort or even more, and sometimes you'll just there will be a split or a year where like you don't play as well. And I feel like those things, like until nowadays I don't really know how to really control it. I feel like it just happens, and it's just the most important thing is to not get discouraged by that, by like one game or two games that you played bad on stage. You just have to have a really strong mental, get each other's back and try to get back up together, have confidence. But a lot of times, in my opinion, or like most of the times, I feel like when those things happens, teammates will lose trust in each other, and that just starts a bad cycle where everyone starts losing trust each other. Everyone plays worse, then like the team just booms, and it's just sad to see when it happens.
People remember when you left CLG and you went to 100 Thieves. This is when 100 Thieves had the year before. They'd been great at the beginning, then everything went to shit with their roster, and by the time they got to Worlds, like, they were all over the place. And they signed this new squad. You came to 100 Thieves, right? But this is where, I mean, this is essentially the start of the story of how you became a support eventually. You started in mid lane, and then they just benched you for that Saligo guy who time was a nobody, and then eventually you had to go to Academy, and then we'll get to that, but you eventually swapped teams, you were a support player, right? What was happening now? Were you actually, like, was the benching deserved? Were you having problems as a mid laner? Was it hard to fit into a new team? What was the issues with 100 Thieves? Because you're back with Afro as well, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, on 100 Thieves, so it started as, I think Afro wanted me to join the team because he thought the main issue about 100 Thieves was not really about the players. It was just about the way how conversations and feedbacks were done after the game.
Right.
And even in game, it felt like he needed someone that is also vocal. So I remember joining the team, and I was really excited too. Like I'm playing with Afromu again. We have Ssumday in the top lane, which was one of the
is
one of the best. One of the best top laner in LCS back then, and we brought Bang, a world champion.
Yeah.
We had Andy, who was like a new player, but like it was still fine. Like we had a really good roster. Everyone expected us to go at least first or second. But I remember the team was really exciting, but it was a little sad, especially like in the reviews. Like I feel like we have Ssumday and Bang who are not really English speaker, right? Like they can kind of understand it, but like most of the time I will have to translate to them.
Right.
And it's really hard for them to like voice their opinion. We have Andy, who was basically a new player with like 4 veterans, basically. So he can't say much, So I feel like at that time, like the coaching staff had too much power. Like I remember like being on every single review, and every player just looks dead. Like they don't really talk. They just like nod their head like whenever like the coaches are talking.
I mean, if people don't remember, your coach was the player Prolly, and if you remember, he had I know he had like a very set idea about the game, right? He was kind of like he wasn't the kind of coach where he just asks you what you want to do. He kind of tries to teach his players how to play, right?
Like it was a completely different style of coaching compared to like Tony that I used to have. Not saying that his style of coaching is wrong. I just thought like the approach that he was taking with the players that he had was not optimal. So I feel like we had so many incredible players and incredible like minds about the game, but we weren't giving enough freedom to do so. So I feel like for me, like obviously I'm only gonna speak of my perspective, where I felt like I was really scapegoated in that roster.
Right.
but in the end, it's like, what can I really do? You know, like
Yeah.
I can't do much. So like,
Yeah.
I just remember going to tier 2 scene in 100 Days Academy and doing my best, and still my teammate thought I was doing pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a sad year. We were expected to go first place or second place, and we ended up being last. So, yeah.
I do have one last 100 Thieves question, which is the academy coach, and so technically like a assistant coach on the main team, was actually someone I knew quite well because I used to do a show with her, Kelsey Moser, and I know that this person is a really smart person about League of Legends. Like she's not a person, mate, that's watched like not only every LPL game ever, she's watched like, you know, I don't know, fucking Brazil or like Vietnam or something. They're the sort of, she's a bit like Emily Ranch. They just watch every game of League of Legends ever played, it feels like. But as a result, I actually wonder what she was like to work with as a coach, because I feel like she would love a player like you, a player that knows how to do other things and just be a laner.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I remember like going into tier 2 scene. I think my biggest, like, I was trying to be really careful because I understand like the way how like they're treating me. Like it's not the same as other players in the tier 2 scene. You know, like they're treating me like I am always right. So like,
oh, right.
You know, I've always did myself that told myself like, okay, like I don't want to come off like really like a, I guess like a dickhead where like my opinions are always right. So I try to listen to them as much as possible. I've also just tried to like share my opinion like about the game in my opinion, really productive way. And Kelsey was a really smart coach. But yeah, I think just every teammate and the coach were kind of treating me like a special boy, you know. So I felt like kind of, oh, like it might be unfair for other players. So I did my best to not sim that way. But I think I still had a lot of fun because of like her and like the players that I had on 100 Thieves Academy, even though I had a really bad time on 100 Thieves LCS team. I in fact enjoyed it more than the LCS team. So
Right.
it was pretty nice.
When you then did, in the middle of the year, this role swap, when you went to Golden Guardians, and initially you went to, it's funny, you went the other way, you went to their academy team because you were like trying support, and then eventually the joke is it's all in that got benched and you got to come in LCS. My question is this, looking back, it's a pretty crazy, like random role swap, but at the same time, actually, I think of some of the things you've talked about in this interview, actually, if people have a hard time understanding that style of mid lane, that is what support does. It does all the roams, and you connect up with people, and you play champions hours for lane. Was it logical to you to swap? Did this make sense to do it? Had you already off-rolled it or something? Why did you swap to support?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think, first of all, I wasn't done. Like, I knew that I still had what it takes to be at the top as a player and everything. And every single time I was playing mid lane, you know, like, as much as I stopped reading like comments and every day, like I can still hear from like here and there, you know, from my teammates or like just randomly, I will just hear, right? And I still thought like people just doesn't really pay too much attention into details that what I was doing about like the roaming style and all that. So yeah, after especially going 10th place, like it wasn't a good showing in my case, right? So like everyone just basically thought I suck at mid lane, right? So I was just seriously thinking about, oh, like what if I just switch it to jungle and support, because like it's like you said, it's just kind of a perfect match. Like they already do what I do, but like it's encouraged to do it in that roles.
Exactly.
You know? So I was like, oh, I think, you know, like maybe I should switch to support. But then I was looking into options, and first of all, I just didn't wanted to join an LCS team right off the bat, like because I wanted to take my time and get adjusted in the lane matchups at least, because I was still confident in terms of game knowledge, but like I didn't want my laning phase to be a burden to that, because especially in bot lane, it's just a completely different setup as mid lane, where it's 2v2 permanently, and there's just so many different matchups. I don't know like what are the kill angles, or like what lanes we win and stuff like that. So I looked for a team to join in academy, at least for a full split or a year. And I think Golden Guardians were open to me doing those kind of experiments. So I joined Golden Guardians with FBI. They brought FBI from Australia back then too as an import. And yeah, I thought like there I got really lucky with FBI as well, because he is kind of the opposite. So he's basically what I needed as a player when I just switched port, because I didn't need more knowledge about the game, but I needed someone that knows really well about the ball lane matchups, the ball lane mechanics. And he was a perfect fit because he knows so much about ball lane matchups and about like ball lane mechanics that we started to talk to each other like almost every day. Like I will ask him so many questions about the lane matchups, and then he will ask me questions about like how the game works in general, like in mid late game, like what he has to do. And I feel like we were doing kind of too well that the Golden Guardians LCS team thought they should move
At
me
the
up.
time, people thought their bot lane was the weakness, right?
Yeah, so it was, I think, Deftly and Ole.
Yeah.
And I remember the LCS head coach bringing me to a one-on-one meeting and asking me if that they want to move me up. And I remember specifically telling them that I don't want to. Like I want a full split and academy at least to like know my matchups more. And then later on, I was just moved up to LCS. And then I think they were also giving me a lot of burden, like whether I should choose between Deathly or FBI and stuff like that. A lot of like dramas were going on. It was kind of hard for me to like even do what I was good at because there was just so many stuff going on. Like I still wanted to learn like matchups, but like I was put in on LCS with new players that like Hunter, Contracts, and Froggen back then, I think. And like they have their opinions too. So like it's like hard for me to like get adjusted to their kind of playstyle, but also learn my new matchups in an LCS setup. So it was just too much going on, and I ended up going down next split, and they kind of replaced me with Kith Grief with FBI, and I was pretty shocked. I don't exactly know what happened, and I remember my teammates were kind of shocked too. But like for me, like it's again like what can I really do? Like I just have to grind it back up again.
Sure.
So on academy, I remember with Gorica like playing and grinding again, and in the middle of the split they just moved me up again, and we started playing really well because I had enough experience in bowling matchups. And I remember like 3-0ing like TSM in the first round robin of playoffs.
Yeah.
And on the second round robin, like we got 3-2 the reverse swept, but still we had a pretty decent showing.
Yeah. By the way, just to rewind a sec, one theme that has emerged in this interview, because maybe people think, I actually think people think you're shy or you're just not outgoing or something, and people often associate that with not being confident. But actually, I noticed in this interview, like actually, it sounds like you have a really strong like comeback mindset. Like you say, you never give up, even if things go badly. You're always thinking of the next split or how can I get back, etc. That's actually quite unusual. I find when people lose, like they get quite depressed. It's the other way around. They go down and they spiral a little bit. Have you always been like this? Did you develop it as a pro gamer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like all the experience that I've been through was kind of like making me more mature and more like the person who I am right now, right? Like I've told you about like the CLG incident where like I was supposed to be on the team, but then they told me that like you're not on the team. Actually, you can be on the second team or leave the team. Like I've been through like those kind of experiences, and you know, I was really down. Like I was like really depressed at some point too. But like one day, like I just realized like, you know, being depressed just makes me even worse. Like it doesn't make me feel better.
Right.
Like I'm still gonna be sad. It doesn't make my situation get anything better. So like I started to think about what can I do like to change what I have. So I started to take actions instead of just like being sad. And you know, like my actions might not be wrong all the time, but like I just do my best and try my best to do the right things and to build it back up. And I feel like those actions can just also speak loudly than words sometimes.
To set up this question, I'll tell you a detail, which is, as anyone who watches this show for many, many years will know, my favourite player actually was Froggen. Now, with that said, Huhi, I'm not like a lunatic fan. Like, I'm fully aware, because by the way, I'm also obsessed with laning, so I don't care that he never roamed and he never... I love that. Like it's like Trophy now. By the way, I'm obsessed with Trophy too. I treat it like a 1v1 video game, and like the way you win is with the CS. I'm a bit like Froggen in that sense. But when I did, essentially, I'm aware he has flaws, and by the way, as you said, he definitely has very strong opinions. Froggen has some of the most strongest opinions of any teammate I've ever heard of. But when I did my interview with Ole, who was the person you replaced, he told me a story which I think sets up this question well. He said, because obviously Ole himself was like a shot caller and a thinker, he was trying to convince Froggen, like obviously as a support, like if you roam to our lane, you know, we can get a kill bot lane and then we can get ahead and stuff. And he basically said, Froggen just straight up sort of told him, like, just play for me. Like, I'm the best player. Like, do what I want and I'll carry the game. Like, I don't need to roam to you. If anything, you roam to me, you know. Was he like that when you played with him?
I mean, like, not in that aspect, but like, I guess I can kind of see like where like Ole is coming from, because there was definitely incidents where like my AD carry FBI was also stained by whenever because usually AD carries take over mid lane.
Sure.
Mid lane
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
So like that's kind of his CS, you know, like whenever we come group, like that's his CS. So, like you're not really supposed to touch it or get it. But whenever Froggen comes, he steals his CS. And then like he was the only mid laner. FBI was telling me that he was the only mid laner who does that, and that he now is kind of paranoid whenever Froggen comes because he's gonna steal his resources, right? So I guess in those kind of incidents, he's more of a greedy player.
Yeah.
But, like it's just like I think he also understands his strengths, which is like he's really confident in his ability of carrying the game and his ability to like play mid late game. So he just wants those resources, which is in my opinion fair if he is that confident. And for me, like I said, I already understand that there's so many different ways of winning the game. So people like Froggen, like I know, like I've also talked to him and I understand that he has a really strong opinion about his point of view. So instead of like, you know, like always like pushing it to my side, I also just try to like play his style of the game, you know. Usually like when I get vision, I will try to get vision on his side more than Haunter's side, so that he is more safe to farm and stuff like that. I think those are the small adjustments and small like detail stuff that I don't think many people can see from outside perspective.
As you say, obviously, eventually you did end up having the real bot lane with FPI, which now has endured for many, many years. It's been very successful, right? One thing I want to ask about is I actually remember this period because obviously I was watching all the teams that Froggen had. And I remember at the time, actually everyone did flame Deathly because unfortunately he did die a lot and he wasn't that great in lane. And at the time, I remember people saying, like, even though no one knew FPI, because like you say, he's from Australia, like he wasn't even playing in the top league. He was in whatever, I can't remember what it's called, Oceanic League or whatever, for OPL or whatever it was called back then. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I did watch a game of him, the first thing you could tell about this guy is his mechanics are really good. True?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like for sure. I think his mechanics are really underrated. Like that's why like why I said was like I was just really blessed to have him as my first AD carry, you know? Like I got to learn a lot about like the details in like mechanics and like what he thought it was a kill angle and all that stuff. Right. So like, you know, like when I was playing mid lane, I was more so focused on the team aspects instead of my own mechanics and all that. And I think with him, like I actually started learning a lot about, like I'm confident to win any lane, even though it's a losing lane now, like versus any other bot lanes. Like that's the kind of like a mentality that he taught me, that in the end, like if we just CS well and play our lane well, like we will be able to carry no matter what. And I thought it was also really interesting and really fun way to play the game as well.
By the way, when you played with FBI, is he someone where, like, sometimes it's funny because back in the day, I feel like star AD carries sometimes wanted to also tell the support what to do, because back then it was when the support was just buying the wards and, you know, he didn't have any damage. But I feel like actually as the game's evolved, now it feels more like the AD carry is the silent one who just clicks the mouse, and the support either like tells them when we can go for a kill or when we're going to roam or group of people. What was the dynamic like with FBI? Who does what? Who leads the lane? Who does? Give me some sense of how the partnership works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in the beginning in lane, I think we'll just bounce ideas each other. I think he will, in the beginning, I think he for sure helped me way more than I will help him in lane. Like he will tell me, like I can walk up here, like I can auto this guy, like create some space for him and all that, which was really helpful for me and improved a lot as a player. And usually in terms of like macro movements, like map movements and all that stuff, I will usually tell him like, like I think you should put yourself in this kind of situation so that you have a better chance of carrying like with your mechanics, you know, because I think in the end, macro and map movements are a foundation about whether you can put yourself in a more comfortable situation to play the game out. So it's not going to win you the game, but it just puts you more in a safer place to, even though you fuck up, it's not as bad, you know, and it just makes it easier for him to play the game. So I just taught him those kind of things, and he started learning a lot too. And stop dying in mid lane when he goes mid, or about the bot lane management. He also started learning that. So I think it was just such a good like pairing for me, because like whenever we have disagreements, I think we've been through so many years at this point that we are also able to talk about any problems towards each other and be okay with it. You know, like we're really honest with each other, and we just worked really well together.
Is it the case? Because I've noticed he seems like also the sort of player. Well, look, some people might think every AD carry's like this, but some of them aren't always that confident. He also seems like the AD carry who is like, he puts the carry part in the name. It's like, give me the Aphelios, for example, and I'm going to carry this game, and everyone basically just pay for me, and I'm going to carry the team fight. Is he like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think he for sure is a carry player, and I think he should be, because I think he has the mechanics to be able to do it and the confidence to pull that off even on stage. I remember like so many times on stage, like we will go for like a 2v2 dive that other people wouldn't go, and even though we mess it up, we will do it again next time, because we know that we both understand that we played it wrong. It's not that they played it right. So it's like, as long as we can do it well, it's like we're going to be able to carry the game. So in some sense, it might be a little selfish, but I think in a good word, we're just really confident.
When you were, like you said, on the Golden Guardians team, there was this one where people always forget the second detail, Huhi. They remember the first one where in the upper bracket you guys beat TSM, you 3-0'd them. But actually, you nailed it perfectly. What they really forget is you almost did it twice. That third game was like a really close game. You could have 3-0'd them twice. And obviously, they went on to win the split and go to Worlds. So that must be a big what if. Like, if you just win that game, everything could be different in Golden Guardians even, right?
Yeah, for sure. That year, like that game especially, or that series in general, I remember me and FBI were really putting Doublelift and Bifrost in their place. You know, like we weren't losing any laning phase, no matter what match we were playing. Like even though like it was reversed, we will like just put them in their place. You know. And I remember one time that we even made Doublelift not buy item after he based. So like he came back with like 1,400 on his bank. And I felt like, oh, like, look, he's so nervous versus us. Like, and like we could tell, you know, like by his movements and all that. In the end, we didn't get to win the series, but I thought I was in the zone, especially that series. Like I was playing really well. And I knew I was kind of gonna get the player of the series if we were gonna win that series. But it was just sad that we kind of fell short.
Because the other question I had was, since they met you again in the lower bracket, and then obviously like they were the one that won and got to go to Worlds. That was how you qualified to Worlds back then, was just the playoffs. It wasn't like the championship points or whatever. So for all we know, it's possible you guys could have gone to Worlds if they hadn't been in the lower. If they just won normally through the upper bracket, maybe you could have come second or third, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, TSM, to be fair, like they ended up winning that split. Like they won the whole tournament. So I mean, like we were at first 3-0, and then the second series we were 2-0 up, and then we lost 3 games in a row. But all 3 games that we lost, we were also pretty far ahead, like most of the games. So you know, like we used to say like as a joke, like, oh, like look, they ended up winning. Like imagine if we just won the series, like. But like you never know, like maybe we will win that series and get wiped the next series.
Okay.
Like you never know, like the outcome. So it's just it is what it is. Like we just didn't get to pull it off like they did.
Right, I have a weird question, because I understand, like you've said, when you leave one team or an opportunity, you want to be a pro, you want to keep playing LCS, but after what they did to you before, did it not feel like a bit weird to go back to 100 Thieves when they asked you to come back? Did you not ever think, like, these guys screwed me? You didn't have any bad feelings or anything?
For sure I did. Like, for sure I was, like, thinking, oh, like, do I have to make this decision again, you know? But what made me really comfortable was after talking to 100 Thieves, I understand that they're not on the same coaching staff, first of all. And I am also going there with FBI and Closer, which was, like, 2 of my previous teammates.
Sure.
And Ssumday is still there, which was my teammates already. So I felt really confident going in. Like I just felt like if I don't take this chance, like I'm wasting an opportunity. And I knew that we can succeed with this roster. So that's why we took it, because right after we left Golden Guard, like we wanted to stay on Golden Guardians in the first place, but the money wasn't matched and all that. And I remember me, FBI, and Closer all started building relationship and team bonding towards each other. The trust was there, So we knew that if we play again together, we have a chance of winning the whole championship. So I think that played a big part of it.
Right. Is it the case that when you guys did that playoff run in 100 Thieves, once you got the good lineup with the Babidagi and it's the roster people remember, this was actually, I think, one of the hardest splits of LCS because there was a lot of big name teams. If you think about it, there was like, obviously Team Liquid still had like Jensen and Core and those people. You had, Cloud9 actually had like Perks at the time. It was like a massive name. And obviously everyone was coming off all that success in G2. You had... Evil Geniuses was pretty good even back then. They had some pretty good players. And I saw in this playoffs, it's all over the place. It's like 5-game series here and there. And people always forget this. You guys did lose to Team Liquid in the upper bracket. I remember a lot of people thought, like, oh, right, Team Liquid's just going to the split now. When 100 Thieves goes to the final, they will lose. You're not all the most famous players. They've got like Jensen and Alfari. It looks crazy on paper. Did you think you were going to win this split? What happened in the finals?
In the finals, I think, like, me and FBI always used to say this joke, like sometimes you just wake up on the wrong side of bed or
Sure.
on the right side of the bed, And when we woke up that day on the finals day, like I think everyone felt like we woke up on the right side of the bed.
Right.
Like we were like, Closer was just so confident going into the series, and FBI and I were like also like pretty good, I remember playing 3 All-Star games back to back, and we're just like wiping them. It wasn't even close, like it didn't even feel that hard. And I felt like, we just clicked that day. And those things just happens. Like I said, like there's days that like, like you will just perform bad, but like there's also days that like that where like everyone just steps up on the team and everyone clicks suddenly.
Because I thought to tie back into what we talked about, the very first question. Obviously, you played CoreJJ in that final, and this is when everyone, I mean, he's actually really good again now, but this is when everyone like worshipped CoreJJ. He was like the master support. He was a mastermind. Obviously, he'd already been a world champion. He's had all the MSI. He's had a pretty amazing career at this point in time. In fact, in many ways, he surpassed you. So was it cool to beat him in a final?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, it was cool to not only beat him in final because he's such a successful player, but he was also a teammate of mine back in Big Five Miracle, like, so like as a friend, like to see each other like on the top when we went through like the hard times together, like definitely, like I'm really happy for him, and I'm sure like I hope that he's also happy for me. That's why I think we still talk to each other a lot. So yeah, I mean, like it was really cool that I got to beat him, especially in the support position.
I also think like the cool thing is when Golden Guardians first started getting this success, I think a lot of people were looking at like Closer because he was the First Blood King. FBI's carrying all the games. So, obviously, people like Ssumday was amazing, like we're talking about. I actually feel like you still got a bit underrated, but I noticed actually 100 Thieves is when finally you start to make loads of those all-pro teams. And even if it was third or second, you were getting on those teams, people were actually giving you credit. Did you feel like you were appreciated?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the first time, like you said, I've been on all pro team before, but like it was always like third, like even though I was winning championships or like even though I felt like I was deserving more, like the most I got was like third place or at most like second. And I think started from 100 Thieves after winning LCS.
You're almost every one, right? You were just on like every season, yeah.
And like as much as I am also happy with that, I think it also like reminded me how opinions can just shift so fast that it's like also not a great thing to like focus on,
Yes.
Like, I can't really just have that as my goal because it's just going to be bad for me. I think it's same thing as like playing the game, and like my goal is to win the game like on stage, but like I now not focus on that, but like focus more so on the journey. And I just realized that once again that it's the same aspect in that area as well.
Right, people will know famously that 100 Thieves made 3 finals in a row. But the problem is, the first one's great because you won 3-0. Then the other 2 just got clapped in. So give me some thoughts on the other 2. Look, it was different teams each time. It was Evil Geniuses one time. Everyone remembers the whole Danny thing. That was a very weird team. I'm sure you have some thoughts on them. Like, in fact, let's just start with that one. The one where you played Danny and Vulcan. If people remember, they had like a weird style. He actually himself was an unusual player. Because think about it, normal AD carry also have the ego of like, I'm going to win lane. I'm going to be up and let's go aggro on this. But his style was almost like don't lane and just get to the team fight or something, and they almost like played to help him. What was that like to play against? It seems like a very unusual approach.
For sure. I think especially Danny was really frustrating to play against. I remember even in that series, like we solo killed them like at level 1 or level 2 ball lane. But it's like we solo killed them, but we weren't that happy because we knew like his strength was not laning phase. Like it doesn't matter how far behind he was in laning phase, he managed to pop off in team fights. And especially right before our series, he had a series versus Team Liquid, and that's where like his legendary clip is, like where he 2v5 pentakill and stole Baron, you know? So we knew they were on a momentum, and like it was kind of hard to stop them. And especially after like the first few games. I think especially after the first game, we were pretty far ahead, and I think we made a mistake in the mid lane when I think FBI got caught, if I remember correctly, something like that, and then the momentum completely shifted, and I felt like we just were not able to like bring it back to on our side.
But the thing is, though, the summer one is the weirdest one ever to me, because if people don't remember, that was the one where like Jensen randomly just joined Cloud9 again, and they weren't even actually a good team until the playoffs. And then in the playoffs, all of a sudden, even early on, they were just like whatever, and then suddenly they just won. It wasn't even like did anything revolutionary. What was this final like?
I mean that one was also pretty frustrating because I think that was the Berserker first split ever. He is a really good player. I think he was the most player that like we were scared of, and he had this weird thing where like he will pick Zeri, and then no matter what in mid game team fight, like if you don't kill him, he just somehow wipes us, and then we just lose the game from there. And like it was just really frustrating to play against like those kind of players like Danny and Berserker, where like they had so much like carry potential, and I feel like FBI can also match that, but like, you know, like he was still on his form. FBI was still a really good AD carry, but I think as a team we just failed to kind of deliver to the end goal.
Right, one of the things that I thought was rough was obviously these were the years where finally you get to go back to Worlds these 2 times. And then, we're going to go. And everyone always, this is what I always tell people. Before the group draw, everyone dreams that you get like a nice group, or maybe even if you get a big team, you beat them. You know, you do like you did at MSI the first time. You beat T1 or you beat EDG or you beat whoever it might FPX, whatever year it was that you go. But I did notice you guys got some brutal groups of these Worlds.
Yeah.
Like, you got the Worlds where it would be like the 2 teams in your group would be like, they should both probably be in like the semi-finals or something. Like, you're not even supposed to beat them. Like, obviously everyone knows with the draw, the nightmare is if you get like Korea and China, like it's game over then, and this was kept happening to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I remember because we were also like pretty frustrated. Both times we went to Worlds on 100 Thieves. I think both times actually there was a winner of the whole Worlds tournament in our groups, and I think I might be wrong, but like I think both times there was also like both final teams were in there or something like that. I think one of the time it was like that. But like however, like you said, it's just like we were versing like the top tier teams in their each regions, and yeah, like in the end you have to beat those teams. You have to be able to beat those teams. And I think we did beat one of the LPL teams. I don't remember if it was like
I think it was EDG.
EDG,
Could
yeah.
be EDG,
I remember. Yeah.
The ones who actually won that Worlds.
Who actually won the Worlds. But still, it wasn't enough because I think we still managed to lose versus like a wildcard team.
I think it was the Oyster team from like Australia or whatever, right?
Yeah, Flying Oysters, yeah. So in the end, it's just on us, but like, it's just an excuse that like we like to say to each other to make ourselves kind of pat in the back. You know, like, guys, like we didn't do as bad because like we were versing this really strong team, but the reality is like we have to be able to also beat them and challenge them like I did on MSI finals to make that run, you know, like you have to be able to beat those top tier teams, be there.
Sure. I want to ask actually, since you played these really famous players, and obviously some of those supports are actually to this day some of the best supports. Like what year that you went when you played EDG, like look, if people don't know, Mako is like the most decorated, like might even be the most decorated Chinese players ever. He's won everything. He's won Worlds. He obviously won this Worlds, MSI, million LPLs, a million LPL All-Star teams. What is he like to play against?
Are you talking about EDG?
Yeah, Mako.
Mako, yeah. I mean, all those big names, like you said, I played against like so many like good players. And in the end, I think I just tried to tell myself like I should not focus on their names and their accomplishment. Like that's only gonna make you play worse, because you're gonna kind of second doubt your own play when they are making a mistake. You're gonna be like, oh, like are they actually making a mistake, or are they baiting me? Because a lot of the time, like good players does bait. Like they make you intentionally come in, and then like that's how they like throw a punch back to you, and that's where you get knocked off. So lots of time, like that's why I think players play with like the nameplates off, but I still play with nameplates on because that's how I always used to play. But I just do my best to not focus on their nameplates, but more so focus on what I am supposed to do as my team and my teammates. I just try to focus on myself the most.
Sure. All right, well, what about this then? Instead of making it like specifically about the time you played him, what about instead if I ask you about, obviously you did play early on Keria when he was like in T1 the first time. Yeah. And since then he's become obviously much more famous. I mean, some people used to say he was even the best player in the world when he was doing all that weird like AD carry support stuff, and he would actually do like the most damage in the game. What have you, just from observing this guy as a support, since you yourself are a pro level support player, what is he so good at? What puts him above other people? Like, for example, that split when he did all the AD carry stuff, I used to joke with Monty, not only was he amazing at it, but it's like he made all the other supports worse because they all tried doing it and not very many people could actually do it like he does. He just had a different vision of the game. What do you think? What's Keria so good at?
I mean, he's just like simply just good at the game, like he can not only play the supports champions really well, like when I watch him play like solo queue and like he's playing other roles, he's really talented. Like, like he's just purely just really talented at the game, and he's on a great like team under a great team. And I feel like that's such a powerful thing to have. When your teammates play well, you naturally also play really well, and I feel like they just have a good synergy going like back and forth, because he plays amazingly, and he also brings other players on his team to play like to match his kind of level. And like you said, like he also invents a lot of meta, like not only because they're able to win with any champions. Like now, like whatever he picks, like such as like Ashe support, like Varus support, like Pyke support, like stuff like that, not other teams will really like want to risk it. He's able to pull off really easily because he's just that confident, and he's really confident on himself, but also on his teammates that they're gonna execute it really well together. So like, I think that's a big part. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna discredit Keria at all, but like I think I want to give some credits to his teammates, where like, like the reason why he is able to pull off like those kind of like really snowbally champions is because his teammates are playing correctly, and supporting him to do that, and has trust in that he can carry the game even though he's a support player. So it's just amazing to see those things. And I have actually a funny story about like the T1 scrims, like on 100 Thieves. So we were screaming them, and me and FBI actually managed to kill Gumayushi and Keria in bot lane 2v2 wise. Like we solo killed them, and we were so happy. We're like, oh my god, we solo killed them. Like we've done it. Like even though it's a scrim, like we feel good, because those are the players that we always looked up to. And right after that, like, when we came back to our lane, we immediately got dove by their team, the whole team. And after that, like the game was unplayable, so we FF'd and like we did our review, and we were talking about like what could they have done like to prevent this to happen, because it's just fundamentally wrong that we solo kill them and we're the one who's get punished right after that. And in the end, our conclusion was that we shouldn't have solo killed them. And for me, that was a little frustrating because it's like kind of quite the opposite of what they're getting, like they're getting a lot of supports, but we are getting told that we shouldn't have solo killed them. And, in the end, like I kind of, like, I remember like Reaper saying it as a joke, but we didn't really know how to fix that, because it's like, it's not as simple as, oh, like mid, you have to trade here so that like Faker doesn't get a move here, and jungle has to just match, because everyone kind of wants to play their game. Everyone wants to be looking good versus their partners, because everyone is playing T1, like my jungler is playing owner, my mid laner is playing Faker, so like they all want to look good, so like they want to be we're extra greedy, and in that sense it's just kind of hard to like make those kind of sacrifice and like play for the team.
Before, obviously, we're going to move on to the Golden Guardians bit. I have a 100 Thieves question, actually, about a player who obviously was on the previous 100 Thieves, who was Ssumday, the top laner. And as we said, once upon a time, he was a very good top laner in the LCS. He was even, if people don't know, he was an MVP of the LCK back in the day. He was a mega player. But I always wondered, because if you ever saw him do interviews, he had much more limited English, and he definitely wasn't like super confident to speak publicly and do interviews, for example. I always wondered, since you can speak to him in Korean, what was his like mentality to top lane in these teams? Because I noticed it looked like they just made him always be like the weak side, which he was amazing at, by the way. But I always thought he's a very skilled player. Like, he could carry some games too. Was he someone who just like, did he just have the personality to be sacrificial? Was it because he couldn't calm as well? What was the story with Ssumday?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I for sure think because he wasn't as comfortable like in English like me, and like we also joined 100 Thieves with FBI, me, and Closer, who were already our teammates before.
Sure.
So like we had like our strong like play style together, where we just hard play off boss side, So I guess in that sense, it was really hard for him to like get resources, and like we were doing our best to like get him to do that. But in the beginning, it was pretty hard. But as we started getting close to each other, and I feel like he didn't fully open up to my teammates. At least for me, I think he opened up a little more because I also speak Korean, and like we have like that culture. In the end, I think he did end up opening up the most towards the teammates that we had on 100 Thieves. And that's why I think he was also more successful than before, because he gets to express his frustration. He gets to express his thought about the game more. And he just willing to talk to us, just in general. So I think that's why like he got to succeed on our team. But like that's also sad, because I think he could have been so much more if he got to do that in other like iteration.
What about working with Reapered as a coach? Because I know people know he has a good personality, but I've heard as a coach, he really is like, well, I guess it's an opinion, but it seems like he thinks of himself as a mastermind. Like, he's the guy who goes away and he comes out with some crazy draft or some angle. What was he actually like to work with? Like, did you have a good relationship? Did you see this game similar way?
For sure. I think I wouldn't necessarily say that like I saw the game similar way as him, but I thought it was really helpful for me personally. Like I said, like I was always a person that I think team is first. Like the team has to do the right thing, And he was quite the opposite. And I remember him sitting me down and telling me like, like in the end, like this League of Legends game, even though it's a 5v5 game, if everyone do the right thing, in the end, you don't really need the communication. Communication is kind of only there, to kind of fix that, because not everyone is perfect. Everyone has to kind of get on the same page somehow, and that's why communication is needed. Because before that conversation, I will make up for my teammates. Like if my teammates are not communicating certain things that I need to say, or I need my jungle to know, I will say it for them, and then it will sometimes clutter. It does clutter the comp, because I am talking for everyone, like because they're not doing their part in my eyes, right? So I thought I was doing them off favor by doing that, but he was also explaining to me that in the end he has to be able to do that, and in the end, like if we all get good enough, we also don't even need that in the first place. Like you can think about it that way. So I think he made me focus on myself a lot more, and I started paying attention to a lot of details about what I was doing in lane and what I was communicating and what I am supposed to do in general, instead of trying to help everyone out. And I think overall that just made me a better player, and I really appreciated that. But also I think a really strong thing that he brought was just the cultural aspect of, he was an older coach than us, but also had an authority figure, right?
Right.
So because before we had Tony Zixlo on 100 Thieves again with the same roster, but we didn't quite do as well as when we had Reapered, because when we had Reapered, we won the championship. And the reason why is because I think, especially, sorry about the dog, but especially with Closer and the FBI, I think they kind of needed some kind of authority figure to make them hold accountable to themselves.
Right.
Because I think they're really good players, but I think that's the thing that they like the most, where like sometimes they blame too much about other people than focusing on themselves. And I felt like Reaper was perfect fit for that, because like he just had this aura where like people just kind of listen to him, and like you can't really talk back. So I thought that was really helpful.
They say no man is an island. We all need people who've got our back. And supporting me and the content on my channel are the following people: Matt Pugnaccio Racula, The Concept, Animosity, Bane Diesel, Ben Glass, Jason, Jensen Gore, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Always a special thanks goes up to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where I talk about whatever topics are on your mind? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are, or maybe even to suggest a guest or a topic for my content? If any of those perks or others catch your fancy, well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? In the Patreon link in the description box below.